Logan Paul is an interesting case study for any YouTuber who is fascinated by the platform and fascinated by those who inhabit it. I don't believe there's one content creator that's not had some form of controversy land at their doorstep at all, ever, point blank. Most of the time, they can move past it. I'd say probably about maybe 90% of the time they can move past it, but it always comes at a cost. It always comes at a price. And that price usually involves stagnation of your channel. And because YouTube puts so much emphasis on certain aspects in order to grow, never mind the social aspect of growing on this platform and what gets used as an argument against it or for it, it becomes a very stressful environment to be in. And that's kind of where we find Logan Paul right now. And look, I've criticized Logan Paul for quite some time, but I get where he's coming from. I understand where he's coming from. And I get when it says here that he's desperate as he reveals why his YouTube career is struggling. And look, just to be bluntly honest here, his career is currently struggling because of his own actions. Most YouTube content creators who get into controversy, which then sees a stagnated growth or a loss of, is because of their own damn fault. And they have to accept that and realize that. But the key is still move forward, figure out what you're doing. And for one, not do it again. And then two, get back and, just keep working, keep grinding, keep doing it. That's how it plays out. That's the honest to God truth right there. Now, Paul is one of the biggest stars on the platform, boasting 18 million subscribers as well as 15.9 million followers on Instagram. However, the American believes that his career is on a downward trajectory, which makes him mad. Yeah, that'd make anyone mad. A lot of times as content creators, we put our entire identity, our entire life into what we do. The way the system works is it's always grinding out content, always putting out content, which requires then an actual investing of ourselves, a huge part of ourselves, which then if it doesn't work out the way that it works, look, here's the thing. The highs are high and the lows are low. And we see this multiple times a year with different content creators talking about mental health, talking about what goes into the job. That was actually a big subject to focus in 2018 that seems to have been brought up in the conversation, but then it just became another conversation that ultimately goes nowhere. Someone even who screws up as much as Logan Paul still has his own mental stability to deal with and his own desires, dreams, hopes, fears, so on and so forth. And if he puts all of that into YouTube, when he's seeing a meteoric rise as he did, the lows are going to be even lower because of that, which is kind of where we find ourselves right here. Now, these claims were refuted by his brother Jake Paul, but Logan claimed it was statistically true that his following was declining. Paul cited that his Instagram follower numbers had decreased dramatically and his YouTube channel growth had slowed, despite taking part in the biggest internet event in history when he fought KSI in a boxing match. But here's the thing with that. Once the boxing match was over, nobody cared. Once the boxing match was over, everyone was like, okay, when's the next one? And no one looked at that and went like, wow, that was great. Because that was the second boxing match KSI was in 2018. So the novelty of it wore off faster. That's the whole thing with these particular trends. The half-life of those trends keeps getting cut down in half. We've seen communities that should be able to kind of like suffice on a particular thing for 6-7 months, maybe by talking about it because it's very interesting, be whittled down to a week or two because the half-life by the time it gets there is so high that it just goes by like that. And then people move on with their day, move on to something else. That's the way the internet works, especially when it comes to YouTube, because of everyone's always kind of need and desire to see what's happening next, to kind of be in the frenzy of it all. It ends up creating this environment that ultimately outright seeks destruction. I would argue it like this. Imagine what we would perceive through pop culture, piranhas, right? A little bit of blood in the water, piranha swirl, clean the bones, move on to the next thing. That's kind of how this whole situation works, right? It really is. And a lot of people out there don't fully realize that. And I think Logan Paul does get it. But that's not going to mean that he's not going to go through the ups and the downs and then be expressing his frustration when he hits those downs, probably because it's been so long since he's actually experienced them. It takes a little bit of time to kind of get used to your new surroundings. But once you do, you can then have a clear head and move yourself forward in a better direction, which ultimately is something that Logan Paul is going to have to do. All I want out of Logan Paul at this point in time is him to confirm that the Suicide Force video is fake, because I've broken that thing down so many goddamn times. I know it's fake. Everyone knows it's fake, but he won't come out and actually say it. That's just my theory on that one. Now, it says here, speaking of his podcast, Impulsive, Paul suggested that the public were sleeping on him, forcing him to change his Instagram bio, saying they're sleeping on me and now I'm mad. Unfortunately, that's statistically true. I've gained 60,000 subs on YouTube in the last 2 months, and I've lost 700,000 on Instagram in the last 6 months, which is about 100,000, or what, about 112,000 a month, roughly 115,000 a month, somewhere in there. And that's a fair amount of loss. But then the question then becomes, were those legitimate accounts? Were those bot accounts? Were those fake accounts? It comes up in the air. But the YouTube subscriber growth thing is very fascinating because he's got 18 million YouTube subs. Now you got to remember, when the Suicide Force video broke, he never lost subscribers. Logan Paul, no, he lost a little bit one day. He lost, I think, like 300,000 in like a day or something. No, it was like 32,000 in a day. He lost. The next day, had 90,000 new subs. And then like the next day after that was like 900 million views, or like 900,000 views in a day or something. It was so many views. It was so much that was happening at the time. He was making so much money off that controversy because everyone was talking about it, and it was just all funneling into him getting new subs. Now, then of course that on top of the tasing of the rat and all the other dumb things that he's done since the beginning of 2018 has kind of led him in this place. Now, remember, his redemption arc, so to speak, or his return arc was completed when he fought KSI. When he battled KSI in August of last year, I think, maybe July or something like that of last year, that was a whole situation where ultimately that was kind of it for him. That was kind of it for Logan Paul. That was the biggest of the big, unless they want to go do another fight. That is when you hit that kind of that peak zenith of a situation, when you get to this peak part of your career, that apexes, you're probably never going to be able to recapture that specific thing again in any kind of relatively specific thing that you've already done, right? So he hit peak popularity with the Suicide Force video, but then hit peak popularity again with the fight. So, but it was like infamy versus kind of fame over here. And from that, he just kind of trailed off. Lionsgate finally put out, or YouTube and Lionsgate finally put out The Thinning 2, which came out and like nobody really watched it. And people kind of realized that Logan Paul's a bit of a dick. Same with Jake Paul's a bit of a dick. And Logan Paul didn't have Shane Dawson come out and do this 8-part softball suck you off series that tried showing the softer side of Jake Paul, which I kind of think now is more of a show than anything else, because the brothers are definitely sociopathic. And if he didn't have that. Now, if Shane Dawson, here's the thing, if Shane Dawson wants to come in and do a series on Logan Paul, right, as a follow-up in 2019 to what he did last year, that would benefit Jake Paul. That would do a lot to bring in a lot of people and a lot of sympathy towards Jake Paul, which he could easily game the system to do. He totally could. He could easily game the system because Jake Paul is an actor. And actors lie. So he's good at that. He's good at performing. Look at the whole, the colorblind videos and whatnot and everything else he's done. He knows how to play the game. But now he's in a position where there's no game to play because he's at the point where he's kind of at the top and he's run out of options. Like I said, Shane Dawson at this point probably would be like his best option. Now, it says here, after a conversation with his manager, Paul admitted he was desperate to reach the peak of his career again, stating, "I'm so hungry right now to climb back on top." That is the worst mindset to have. That is the absolute worst mindset to have. Because if you go into anything with, I got to clamber back up to the top, I got to get back to where I was at, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. You're setting yourself up for failure. You got to go through the shit and work your way back up again. And the way you did it originally, you have to change a couple things and maybe not be as much of a dick, which it does kind of appear that you've backed off those kind of stunts. But the problem though, is that you got famous by acting like an asshole, which means that if you're hungry to start climbing to the top again, you're then going to go and act like an asshole. I wouldn't put it past Logan Paul to go and find Erica Costella, Casterio, whatever her name is, Jake Paul's ex-girlfriend, and hook up with her like he did with Alyssa Violet. And I feel bad for knowing that he slept with Alyssa Violet. I feel bad for knowing who any of these people are, right? But at the same time, when you're the top dog in that particular regard, people pay attention. And I always like to look at YouTube from more of a business focused perspective, understanding the creator's motivations versus how the platform either rewards them or penalizes them. And because I find it to be fascinating. So when I look at Logan Paul, that's pretty much what I see. But if he's ready, if he's hungry to climb back up, don't do it how you did it before. Vine is dead. Vine is dead. You can't come back through Vine. So your best shot would be to take some of your money, right? You take some of your damn money that you've earned, the millions upon millions of dollars, invest in maybe a movie that stars you, that paints you in a good light, like a rom-com or something that you can then sell to your younger teenage girl, fangirl audience, and then maybe go down that path. But that's just the truth of it, man. Like that's the truth of it. If you're noticing a stagnation from a lack of growth, that means YouTube is not recommending you. And if they're not recommending you, then that's where you find yourself. Now, his brother was unable to get on board with his comments, claiming that just Logan was comparing his plateau to his peak and was making things up in his head. However, Logan was still behind the idea that he was currently not faring well, saying the tide turns very quickly in our industry. People are chirping and I don't want to let it get to me, but I really do listen. That's actually just a human response on that one. You don't want to let it get to you, but it still will find a way to get to you. There's nothing about that you're going to be able to do. Saying, I have set the bar so high for myself, and if I don't hit that, I'm disappointed in myself. Dude, you set the bar high, then you faked a dead body in a forest in Japan, and that bar then lowered. And you went with it. So then you tried coming back by doing more stupid antics, still failed. You know, there wasn't any kind of like genuine retrospective time in the early part of last year. But then KSI did his fight in March. You challenged him to a fight. You went through the next couple months trying to do that. The next, 5 months. Then you fought him. And then that was it. You hit your zenith. You hit your apex. What can you do now? Like literally go to Russia and fight a bear? Because that's the kind of person you are. Where you're going to look for what's going to get you back on top, but it's going to be something so ridiculously stupid that you run the risk of either damaging yourself further or even going as far as to potentially killing yourself through the action. That's how I view that. Logan Paul is in a very weird position. See, PewDiePie was able to transition away from gaming and jump into meme culture. And meme culture is huge right now, right? It's huge right now. Dr. Phil reading Reddit, super big. I don't understand either, but it's true. So you've got that. But what does Logan Paul have? He tried jumping into Twitch. It didn't really work out for him. He does his show the way he does his show, but he requires big spectacle. So he went to like Yosemite last year and like, hey, I'm in Yosemite. But then like they got mad at him for, bringing a lot of people to Yosemite and making a mess and stuff. This is how Logan Paul, this is where he's taking his career. So probably one of the better things he could do is to find a way to pivot to something else. And it might cost him some people, but it opens him up to a whole new marketplace of people that maybe know who he is, but find what he does there to be compelling. And I think that's what a lot of creators go through. I go through that kind of crap all the time. I'm always thinking of like where I'm at, where I can go, and what interests me. And the thing is, YouTubers have to evolve. If not, then they kind of get like Logan here, where they get desperate because they've plateaued and they just don't know what to do. And then the self-doubt sets in, and that's a very debilitating mental state to be in. So hopefully, look, I don't hate Logan Paul. I just want him to admit the Suicide Force thing, but I do hope that he figures it out, as I hope every creator figures it out, because we put so much of ourselves in various ways into this platform. I want to see everyone be a success. I do. I really do. So, that's where we are, and hopefully things will change, but who knows?